Hi, everyone. Welcome to Caring Conversations. We are so glad that you are taking a moment and joining us today. You're here with Pastor Susan and Pastor Lillian. And Susan, I was wondering if you would share what's been on your heart.
Oh, I'd love to, Lillian. So good to be with you today. And thank you, all of you who join us in these conversations. I pray that, that the Lord would really be with you as you are listening as we sense God with us. So, Lillian, there were a couple of verses from Isaiah that were really striking to me over the last several weeks. I want to share two of them with you and invite a conversation about this. The first passage comes from Isaiah 43. It's verses 18 to 19. And it says this: "Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland." Again, that was Isaiah 43, 18 through 19. Now, I want to share this one with you. It's a mere, 3 chapters later. This is in Isaiah 46, verses 9 to 10. Hear this: "Remember the former things, those of long ago. I am God, and there is no other. I am God, and there is none like me. I make known the end from the beginning, from ancient times what is still to come." And there it ends. Again, that was Isaiah 46, 9 through 10. I was so struck by this in this same book, where just a few chapters away, we're invited to both forget the former things, and then remember the former things. It's, God has never ceased to be faithful to his people. But how does that strike you, Lillian?
Oh, and I love how that you just said, God has never ceased to be faithful. But my question to you is, how are we supposed to, as people who love the Lord and want to be obedient to him, how do we both forget and remember? Like, those are two paradoxes.
Right.
And so how do we do that? And what is the Lord calling us to do? And I think, especially in light of our previous episodes, our previous conversations, being in this space, this prolonged space, how are we supposed to forget and remember at the same time?
Right. Because isn't it astonishing how it's like, how could that be possible to forget and remember? Um, I really think it's a fascinating invitation coming from two sides to know the faithfulness of God. Uh, I'm wondering if between forgetting and remembering, there's learning. That between forgetting and remembering, there's learning. And I almost sense that we move, there's a leaning into God. One, if we have a forget the former things, we're leaning leaning forward into God. What is God calling us into? And then fascinating, when we're remembering, it's like we're leaning back into God, knowing and recalling the faithfulness of God. And so I'm wondering, between those two things and that forgetting and remembering, there's an invitation to see, what are we learning? How does that strike you?
Oh, I think that strikes the right chord. And then specifically in this passage in Isaiah 43, when it says, forget the past, right? And then it says, see, I am doing a new thing. And that new thing, that the example that's here, right? That metaphor is that he's bringing up springs of water in the desert, in the wilderness, in the wasteland.
Yeah.
And so forget what was possible, forget what was, the reality, because God is calling us to see that he can do something new, something different. And that requires learning, like that posture of learning, that posture of openness.
Yeah.
So I like how you're intertwining that it's a call to learn.
Mhm. That really is fascinating. I loved your wording of a call to openness, right? Because it is asking us to let go a little bit of our expectation of how it has to always be. Um, leaning back on scripture, even, or looking through the stories of God's faithfulness to the people of God. And for some reason, that throughout this whole pandemic, the image, and especially as a leader through it, the image of standing on the banks of water, right? I'm recalling Moses and leading the people of Israel out of bondage in Egypt. And here they are, they're moving forward and out into this freedom, but they end up stuck right at the banks of the Red Sea. And there's an army advancing against them, and all they can see in front of them is water. And so now I'm just going to switch it over to myself. I promise you, I've not been at the banks of water where I would expect that the water would part, where I could walk through. And maybe that's a little bit of an example of this, of letting God move in new ways.
Yeah, letting God move in new ways, and unexpected ways. Because and I'm going to stay in that image because I think it's such a powerful one. Maybe we haven't physically been on the banks of the water, but where we are is in a place where it's like, I don't know, God, like what I see in front of me, I don't trust any of it. And when he does, I mean, I'm just picturing like, what was it like for the people of God, the Israelites, to see the parting of the waters, like unexpected, like just astounding. And so, I mean, actually, as I'm picturing it, I feel a little bit afraid even because it's like, this has never happened before. And he makes the way. And as the hundreds of people, thousands of people, right, of God are passing on dry land. And they're saying, my gosh, look at this. Look what we're doing. We're going to a place that we've never known. I can't help but wonder if there's some people who are like, hold on a second, and like out of love and concern would almost like put their hands up against the sides of the water and just to make sure that it didn't fall, like start to cave in, and was like, okay, come on guys, like I'll hold it. I'll make sure that you're safe. But really their role, right, of standing there trying to hold up the walls of water, they're actually not the ones doing it. The Lord is the one who's protecting, right, and pulling up those walls. And when we tell the children's version of the story is, and then they passed out and then they were safe, but it was the length of a huge body of water. The Red Sea is not like from where my desk is to my door. Right? This is, I mean, I don't even know historically how long it is, but it's a long distance, right? We're talking. And so all of the emotions and thoughts that go through their minds. And yet God is saying, see, I am doing a new thing. Forget what was. And then when they've arrived to a different place, then he says, remember that I am.
Right. My goodness. That is so striking. And I want to hold that, just how you further develop the story for us and being that, because isn't that so right? It's filled with that emotion and fear. But even the gift, like I did love that image because as people standing up against the water holding it up, because of course they're not holding it up. And even though some of us may feel like we are, we'll just laugh about that and enjoy the fact that we're humans and this is what we do. But there is something so valuable about standing against that wall and letting somebody else pass, because you're letting there be a known security and a known safety. And I see your presence there and letting people go by. That's actually pretty profound. And maybe that's the spot where the leader is. And by leader, I want to say there are people that you are connected to who look to you for care, for comfort, for strength. And sometimes that voice of, you can do this, keep going. And maybe that's standing like that.
Mhm. Yeah.
How does that strike you, Lillian?
Oh, I think as you were saying that, I actually thought of that, the analogy or the image that we've used here about running the marathon. And I wonder if the role of the leader is standing on the side, maybe not holding up,
Mm,
trying to hold the water, but standing on the side saying you're safe, and being the cheering crowd, which
yeah.
always fascinates me, because when I watch marathon runners
Mhm,
or marathons, the stands or the sidelines are so full of people, of
mhm,
supporters, of cheers.
mhm.
And they're not the ones running the marathon, but there's so much excitement and adrenaline. And I wonder sometimes if that's the role of the leader, or the person, maybe you don't consider yourself a leader, but you are in a position where people are looking to you.
Right.
And sometimes it's that those words of assurance, you
Yeah.
are safe, that,
Yeah.
you can keep going, take one more
Mhm,
step.
mhm.
Um, yeah.
Mm. Yes, I really like that. I really like that.
Yeah. And so I am so thankful for this topic, just that forgetting and remembering, and how at first glance it feels like a paradox, like how do you
Mhm,
forget and remember? But your
mhm.
invitation to learn, to be in a posture of learning. And it's both that forget what you thought had to be a certain way, um, but remember who God is, remember what he's done, remember his faithfulness. And then how that being able to forget and remember can place us in a position in someone's life,
Mhm,
um, to be
mhm.
um, to be one who can speak God's truth into their life.
Mhm.
Thank you for doing that, Susan. Any other thoughts that you want to share before we
Oh,
end our time?
goodness, just to double down, I love how you summed everything up there, of that it is God we are holding on to. And so, in a sense, it's like to hang on to God alone. And of course, as we're caring for one another. But in this context of such disruption, all of us may be feeling in the middle of that Red Sea that we can't even tell has parted, but that's where we are. Um, it is God we hang on to, who is leading. And oh my goodness, that's just profound.
Mhm.
Thank you.
God is leading. Hang on to him.
Mm.
Thank you for those good words. And thank you all for joining us again for another episode of Caring Conversations. Until next time, take care.